Meeting to order with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our clerk is excused this evening, so I'll be happy to entertain any motions to nominate someone to act as our clerk this evening.
Make a motion, Trustee Rice be the clerk for this evening's.
Support.
Treasurer Rice.
Treasurer Rice, excuse me. Treasurer Rice.
I still support it.
Motion by Brown, support by Bills. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to appoint Treasurer Rice as temporary clerk for tonight's meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Treasurer Rice. We have an agenda in front of us. Item 4 on our agenda.
I move
Roll
to-
call first.
I always
Oh,
miss that one, don't I? My apologies. I don't when our clerk is here.
All right,
Then you'll be ready. Would you do roll call with the board, please?
sure. Supervisor Milky?
Here.
Clerk Cody is excused. Treasurer Rice here. Trustee Bills?
Here.
Trustee Brown?
Here.
Trustee Smith is excused. And Trustee Thering?
Here.
All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Now item 4 on our agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Brown to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Presentations. We do have our county commissioner rep here this evening, Miss Commissioner Engler. You have the floor if you have anything you'd like to offer.
Just a few minutes, you got a presentation and everything. The big news is that we finished planning today for the first time, so anyways, so that's why we're here. today.
Nice.
So a couple things with the county that's going on, real quick is, in 1992, the county was one of the first ones that started an adult drug court. And it was kind of a beginning program. Well, it's become real popular, but they haven't really increased the money. So every year we've seen money go down and down and down. This year they finally opened up some additional funding sources. So we've actually going to ask for double what we've been getting. So so it's kind of nice to see a trend that's been kind of, more counties been picking it up and they haven't really adjusted it. So that's kind of, it's been one of the programs that's been real successful. Keeps people that have drug addiction problems out of jail with treatment, so that's a big deal. And a little bit on the same vein is that our Swift and Sure program, which deals with real hard probation violators. We got, actually, they gave us extra money, $20,000 to do opioid testing, so that's kind of a new program, something we can do. So it's been nice after years seeing all the money keep going one way, and finally this year we look like we're going to see the money come back to us. So,
Nice.
Yay.
Awesome.
so if you don't have any questions, I know you got a big agenda. That will be it. So,
Congratulations on your farm. Planting.
well, you know, farmers are either too dry or too wet. Now
Yeah.
it's too dry.
I
It's never just right.
know it is. No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Engler. That takes us to item 6 on our agenda, public meeting hearing. We have a continued presentation of the Drinking Water Revolving Funds Project Plan by Jennifer Graham. Still printed Hodges on my agenda, just so you know. This is not my fault, Jennifer.
Okay.
Mr. Stuhldreher, do you have anything you need to add to this?
I do not, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that introduction, and yes, it's Jennifer Graham, Gordy Frazier. Thank you, Cam, I appreciate that. I feel like this is deja vu a little bit. I was here a month ago, but this time it's on the water side, so which is another very exciting part for us to present to the township tonight. So I guess just a brief recap before we get into stuff. This is the project plan that was, or is intended, subject to you guys approving the resolution tonight. I imagine all of you read it back and forth,
Yeah.
you know, 3-4 times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But this is the report that we're talking about. went through the effort. I worked with Kim on this presentation to make it in a lot more simplistic and overview, not only for your benefit, but obviously for the public's benefit. This is intended to truly be a collaborative process to engage your residents, your customers on this, and just provide a good education tool. It also will act as meeting minutes with the submission of the project plan, so that saves in some of that time as well. So getting into the presentation, by all means, as I go through the slides, feel free to ask questions. Some of this is going to be an overview again, because we had done an introduction 3-4 months ago, just on overall information on the water and sewer system. So again, these initial slides are just intended for the public to just remind everyone, as a municipality entity and owner-operator of a potable water system, there's a lot of mandates that the DPW, the township has to go through and submit to both Eagle and EPA. And some of those we definitely have the ability to assist with as able, but there's a lot of monitoring, reporting, sampling that is constantly ongoing with this water system. And just to kind of highlight a few of those, the first one's the water reliability study, which out of that we're looking at our existing infrastructure and then evaluating the structures itself, not only structurally, but the ability capacity-wise to meet existing 5-year and 20-year demands. So that's what our piece of involvement that's quite crucial, which then helps us derive a capital improvement project, which is a lot of the projects that we have included in this project plan. So that capital improvement project, it identifies immediate, short-term, and long-term needs. So they're prioritized based on the infrastructure itself, growth, demands, and it takes a look at a lot of water supply, storage, treatment, and then the infrastructure itself. The next piece, and we completed that recent one in 2017, and then we did another one in 2022. So it's quite new with the capital improvement projects. As far as the wellhead, the township maintains and has a current wellhead protection program, and recently we did get a grant through Eagle, who administers that, to help with feasibility to research a new potable water source. Asset management and rate study, that's something that Kim's constantly reiterating, working with Dawn Lund for evaluations of the rates. Asset management, that was requirements, I believe you guys submitted a couple years ago to Eagle for communities that serve populations over 1,000 people. And that's quantifying your infrastructure, evaluating it, rating it as far as condition, level of service, level of criticality, things of that nature. And then the newest thing is the lead and copper, which is a mandate that was implemented by the state in 2018, which is requiring a lot of every community, potable water-wise, to look at their service leads and identifying right now preliminarily if they potentially contain lead and or galvanized, and then what plans you have for replacement moving into the next 20 years. That also has incurred quite a bit more DPW's sampling and laboratory fees for municipalities that they've had to absorb. Your water infrastructure itself, it's defined, it's got supply, which is groundwater wells. We have 7 of those, which then go through 3 different treatment plants, Meridian, Mission, and Isabella, and for iron removal. And then from there, that's the water that gets with series of assistance for some booster stations, specifically at Isabella, that distributes water out to the system. So, and then you guys have, as you see, just driving around, we've got 3 water tanks, 2 of them elevated, 1 ground-based, and then roughly about 70 miles of pipe size, anywhere from 4, majority being 8 to 12 inch in size, and C900. So, pulling some of the excerpts out of the water study that we did last year, we look at demand and then equating that, how does that impact capacity related to our supply, our storage, and our distribution, and defining those capital improvements. Right now is a snapshot for you guys. On average, your residents are consuming about 1 million gallons of water, which equates to about 250 gallons a day. Pretty consistent with industry standards. Peak factor, applying to that, what we experience on a max day when people are irrigating, schools in session, is about 2.3 that we apply for a peaking factor, which again is pretty consistent with industry standards. And average fire flows coming through the hydrants are about 1,500 for the entire township, which is very good. Capacity, the biggest thing we looked at is we break it down, looking at each infrastructure, and we look at the different treatment facilities, the booster stations, as far as are we able to meet our firm capacity to meet our max day demands. And firm capacity meaning if we were to take our largest well, our largest booster station offline, can we meet those max day demands? Can we accommodate if we have a fire? Are we able to still continue supplying that water if we have, you know, drought, everybody's irrigating, we have a water main break. Those are some of the criterias that 10 states through EGLE requires us to review. And what we're seeing is, and I kind of identified it here, is firm capacity on the supply and treatment side is our limiting capacity. So we are at or near our ability to meet those max day demands with our wells and our treatment through iron removal. Looking from a storage perspective, storage is looked at a little bit different. Storage, if you can envision, is different layers where it's set up to handle your average day flows, your fire flows, and then emergency. And so that looks at the district as a whole, and comparing that as far as the storage volumes you guys have through your 3 tanks is we're good for about the next 10 years. So it's on our radar, but we'll continue to evaluate the capacity of the storage tanks every 5 years when we do our water studies. So hopefully that still remains consistent. And at this time, storage is not identified in the project plan that we're submitting to EGLE. You guys have any questions so far? So the biggest reason we're here today, much like the clean water, if you guys recall from last meeting, is with the drinking water, it is the state's providing, and this is a process they've been offering over the last 20 years, is a low interest loan, and with the ability for loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness meaning, you know, air quotation grant. What is of unique time and behoove you guys to make application is that's where all the Infrastructure Jobs Act, the ARPA bill money has been dumped into, and they've appropriated certain buckets of money specific for communities based on their income status, if they've lead service lines, and then just the scope and type of magnitude for their projects. So that's what's making it especially more appealing to everyone to want to make application. And aside from that, it's definitely worth noting, I mean, the interest rates themselves, 20-year is set regardless of income, 1.875%, and then you have the ability to get a loan over 30-year at 2.25%. And I'm sure some of you guys have gone, you know, looked at cars, homes, current interest rates right now, bonding. They're not this rate. They're about, you know, 2, 3, 4 times that amount right now. So it's definitely, that's what's so noteworthy about this program right now is access to additional potential for grant and then the interest rates themselves. So with what we were required to do in our project plan, and the intent of this PowerPoint on the next few slides to provide a quick overview is description of the projects that were identified, that we've identified from the water study, work with staff on that we've identified as priorities in our capital improvements, what potential impact that these projects have, not only if we do them or if we don't do them, meaning the need for them, alternatives that we looked at, because that's always part of our role is looking at the projects we need to do, but are there other viable, economic, or reasonable alternatives that we can implement instead to get us to meet our capacity and redundancy needs. Project financing, potential impact to users, and then what social, environmental, and economic impacts, and then means to mitigate those are involved. So that's what these next slides will represent, and what EGLE is looking for that I could put in 3 slides, and I had to put it in a 3-inch report. So as far as the projects themselves that we've identified to submit to EGLE, that majority of them came from the water reliability study, working with staff as far as what they're seeing for needs to improve efficiencies in operations. The biggest ones right now, I had touched on a minute ago, is our deficiencies that we're nearing for supply and treatment. So we're looking to provide an additional potable water well. And I know you guys are aware of that we're working through wellhead protection grant on to do a feasibility study on. Expanding a treatment facility to provide, once we have the well, we need more iron removal filters to maintain that additional capacity. And then we also have a water main extension that's identified on Pickard-Somerton, just to complete a loop that's on Pickard-Somerton to Broadway, to complete a loop just for added redundancy, reliability, and fire suppression. And then also looking at our lead service lines. The township currently is actively working with residents to notify them and put them on notice so that we can go in and just start doing that initial evaluation. And right now, to date, there's about 466 leads at this point that we don't know what they are. We suspect them to not be lead, but we have to do definitive eyes on the leads to verify what they are. And I'll talk about the lead service line, I think, in my next slide. No, I lied. Okay. So to elaborate on need for the project for the treatment facility, what we're looking at is to increase our supply and treatment of a well. We're looking roughly, at this point, to meet our next 10 to 15-year demands, another 700 gallons per minute is what our target is. And so if you guys recall, and if you haven't gone out to Isabella or the other facilities, I encourage you guys to set up with Kim and get a tour, because it is pretty impressive. They do a great job of maintaining their infrastructure. And it's something they're very proud of, and they should be. So, but that facility, when we worked on it back in 2009, it was set up for redundancy and to be duplicated. There's piping there, there's a footprint there to expand that building, if you can imagine, to the south, right? Am I saying my directions correctly?
To the north.
To the north. Thank you. So it's set up for that, to accommodate additional iron removal filters, high service pumps, and expand that building to expand the backwash lagoons that are there. So that's kind of been the long-term vision, is we were going to be at this point. As, you know, sometime we always are promoting, advocating growth, and this is a desirable area that people are moving to and looking to grow to. So with that, we have a supply well, and that's kind of what we're working on at the moment through the wellhead protection. Is hopefully it's going to be presented that we actually just got bids today, but doing feasibility of a well site over by Mission Treatment, that's going to potentially be a new viable water source for us, and we'll have the ability to extend water over to Isabella, expand the iron removal there, add some high service pumps, and then we'll be able to accomplish and comply with 10 state standards to meet our max state demands for the next 10, 15 years. On the supply side, and I touched on the water main extension, so, and these two little images kind of just show for perspective the locations that we're looking at. Eagle always advocates to eliminate any dead ends, promote looping. It provides redundancy in the system. If you've got to do some isolations and shut off, you have ability to supply customers from another direction. It also ensures water movement, improves water quality, so we're always looking as a Eagle to advocate and determine those locations. And this location itself specifically was targeted when we do our water reliability study. We have a hydraulic model, and so we'll simulate fire situations in certain parts of the township, and this one was one that had less than desirable fire flow. So by putting a loop in this location would improve fire flows for this side of town. Also, the other one we have on the left side that's shown is, as you can see, where our new potential well location is identified. We want to also provide a redundant raw water supply line along the freeway corridor there to help with, so Mission Treatment Facility is on the left, and then we've got Isabella. So if we ever have to take Mission off or vice versa, we can send water to either treatment plant and provide that level of treatment. So again, a big tone of this, with the water improvements we have, is reliability and redundancy. That's definitely just you guys being good stewards for your community is something you're always advocating and wanting to promote and ensure that we don't have disruption in water supply and continue to provide that to our customers. So these are the two water mains identified, and then I touched on the lead service line and looking at further vetting about a little over 450 lines that currently exist in the system and what they are comprised of. So to talk about lead service lines a minute, you can kind of see what Eagle has mandated is they're not, right now you guys have ownership and control to the right of way or the curb stop for your line. Well, what Eagle wants to see is taking it the next step further. Any lead service lines to within 18 inches of the home or the first shutoff valve, they're expecting a municipality, if lead is found or a gooseneck or a fitting, they want to see those replaced. And so the hope being with that mandate, it would be great if they would provide some funding for that, because they're imposing quite a financial mandate on a lot of communities. You guys are pretty fortunate you don't have that many, but some, it's going to be a very dire situation for them to have to replace, and that's where those buckets of Infrastructure Job Act money that we're seeing is specifically for lead service lines. For you guys, like I said, Kim has been sending out notices to residents. The first step had to be completed in January 2021. You had to do an initial DSMI, they call it. And what that is you're going through your property records, talking to DPW staff, and it's just kind of a gut check of what you think, based on, them doing their field work, looking at meter reads, and just experience with the system itself when water main is installed, age, things of all those are all taken into consideration. So you can initially identify and do what they call a preliminary DSMI just based on your historic records of that time. And that had to get submitted to Eagle back then. Now the next steps, what they want by 2025 is what they call a final DSMI. So they want to see you making concerted effort to verify and validate at least 20% of those lines that you think may have lead or not. You have to actually field verify. Whether you're accessing the home, you're vac trucking and digging them up, some level of effort to certify and verify that they either contain lead or they don't contain lead. Once you get through that process, then you have to come up with a plan and submit it to Eagle to actually implement those upgrades and replacements. During this entire time, the sampling protocol has changed for lead. It's definitely now, they've taken it so the threshold from 15 down to 12. Your township is well below the MCL requirements, so there's no potential concerns or threats with lead, so I thought I would share that. But it is a protocol and mandate. And even if you find out you don't have any lead service lines, you still have to go through this level of effort and documentation to the state. So it's required for every municipality. So we have factored in with the cost of this project, assuming the worst case scenario, these lines are lead and they have to be replaced. That's the best we can do at this point. As Kim and her staff go through and work with residents on these lines, we'll continue to take them off the list and complete that final DSMI. But for purposes of submitting to Eagle, we've just assumed the worst, that they do contain lead. And that also helps us with scoring of points to have access to loan forgiveness. Any questions?
Two, and maybe this is more for our director, if that's okay. As far as, what are our oldest service lines in this township?
Well, we have, primarily, the township's water system started in the late 80s. But we do have lines, so if you had an existing home and you had a well, and you used your existing line from the well, and then you tied another line into that out to the main, then that's where we feel we will find some of those. And because you have to go 18 inches within the home, or up to the first shutoff valve, that includes that piping that was pre-existing before we had the water system.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
So a lot of what we did is for our verification that we could do prior to actually going out and excavating these is we looked at the age of the home, when it connected, was it a new connection, did they run a totally new line? So we were able to eliminate some. And we had already done a little bit of this before because some of this mandate, it was coming up. So if we were, for instance, if we had a break at a home, we would just document at that point because we knew we were going to have to do this. So we've been proactively doing that as well. But we do have 400, well, it's not quite that high now, but because we've been working on them. But we are going through the effort since we've gotten the vac truck to go out and do each individual need.
And that makes sense. I guess my question was posed primarily with most of our water systems so new. I was surprised that we felt there might be potentially 24% of those service lines is lead. But your description of tying into older systems, that makes complete sense.
And we had to assume if we didn't know for sure, you
Right.
had to assume that
Yes.
they are.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
how the DSMI works, the initial one.
So, my second question, when you describe what the state's mandating, and I think the second part was visual inspection of these service lines that you suspect, would you say 20%, I think, that?
Yes, right now, that's now.
So if the intent by the state is to replace lead service lines, so we might go to a home, dig up their yard, go, oh, it's lead, cover it back up, come back in a year and fix it. Kind of would make, would make sense to
Yeah.
me that while you're there and you have it open and you say, oh, there's lead there, let's replace it now.
Well,
And
it's
that's-
quite a large exercise. It's one thing to vac truck and pothole it in an isolated
It's
area.
another-
I see.
Yeah, it's
But
another thing to actually replace.
dig up
the
a
whole
hole.
Replace the
yard.
line.
And you
Okay.
gotta get permission too, because at this point, we're accessing people's homes, because once you get past the curb stop,
Right, it's
really,
private.
it's outside your jurisdiction, but it's a requirement imposed on you as a municipality. So it is an interesting area, so our hope and my philosophy's been, if this is something that we're gonna be mandated to do, we wanna find grant funds to cover those costs.
Absolutely.
And so that's why this is a perfect outlet for that, I feel.
And again, your description makes sense. A visual inspection isn't the same kind of trench that you would dig for replacing the
Yeah.
line, so that's helpful.
No, it's
Thank
great
you.
questions though.
Plus, you need to make arrangements with the homeowner because you do
Right.
have to go within the home. So we would have to make arrangements to have that work done as well, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I think at this point, they're requiring a licensed plumber to make
Yes.
that connection too. That can't be DPW staff. So Eagle has quite a few mandates involved with this that I didn't, get into that high level of detail for.
Thanks.
So we just want to find the grant money for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's the goal.
Yeah, just was curious about some of those things, so appreciate it.
And- Yeah, because realistically, I mean, it's not your system, it's what everybody connected to. We haven't had any control over that, but now you have the authority over it,
Right.
so to speak, so. Well, good
The
question.
responsibility for it.
there you
The
go.
responsibility
The
for it.
responsibility.
Responsibility, yes,
Yeah.
it's not, it is frustrating, yeah.
Similar regulations have happened with natural gas lines too,
Oh,
in the
okay,
homes.
good to know.
I work in the pipeline industry, so.
Well, I need natural gas at my house, so.
Thank you again.
So this, again, is for the public. You know, there's always these emerging contaminants, and lead and copper is one, obviously PFAS is another. So this slide really is just kind of intended on what is lead, you know, some of the health problems associated with lead. I'm sure you guys have seen this come through from the local health department as well. And I know Kim has this literature also, and I just wanted to include this, incorporate it into the slide. So need for the project, and again, a lot of it's reliability, redundancy. For the residential needs, I mean, you guys have been continuing to provide exceptional water and quality, quantity to your customers for 40 years, and the goal, we want to keep doing that for another 40, another 100 years. And so these upgrades are definitely necessary and crucial so that we can continue to provide that level of operation. We want to make sure we have adequate supply and storage to meet max day demands, to meet all our customer demands. We want to remove any potential existing lead service lines that are in the system that potentially could have impact on water quality. You know, and again, same thing on the municipal side, is that redundancy, reliability. These are all very critical pieces of your infrastructure, and so they need to continue to be evaluated, reviewed, and upgraded. Environmental impact, same thing. We want to, you know, not doing these upgrades, especially on the capacity side, not so much with the water main looping, but with supply. I mean, these are mandates that are imposed by Eagle. Eagle comes in every other year to do what they call sanitary surveys, and they're doing a high-level overview and evaluation of your system. And every year, you guys are constantly getting, you know, sufficient, adequate reviews on your system. We don't want to come back and have deficient. That's the least thing we ever want to see. And if we do continue to experience the max day demands we're having without providing additional supply and treatment, we risk getting a deficiency notification, and then not addressing it leads to other things that we won't talk about. So alternatives evaluated. The two gimmies for, same thing on the sewer side, you know, no action is very self-explanatory, and immediate. It doesn't have any financial impact, but by continuing to perpetuate a situation, obviously, is going to cause more financial impact when we don't address any of our deficiencies in the system. So that is considered, it's an option, but it's not a viable option that we've pursued at all, nor recommended. Alternative 3 is continuing to optimize our existing infrastructure, which the Township DPW staff do. They optimize it to its fullest extent. They implement energy efficiencies, they're monitoring, they've got SCADA. So the equipment is operating as efficient as possible, so short of adding more infrastructure, that one also is, it's listed, but it's not applicable, because there is nothing more that we can do with the existing components we have to make them output more or do any better. So realistically, option 3 is the alternative that is alternative 3 is the recommendation. And so that's to construct some new infrastructure. But there are 2 options that we did look at associated with that, as far as constructing a new well and treatment. And the recommendation from our report was constructing the well, and we're going through that feasibility process right now, with the intent to expand the Isabella treatment facility. That site is set up, it makes sense. That's where all our primary infrastructure is, and it's set up to be expanded and accommodate additional storage tanks, high service pumps, iron removal treatment. But we did want to throw in a second option, which, because the well potentially is going to be located at Mission, do we expand that location instead? So we did look at some costs, and realistically, as you guys can see from the prices, there was about a $2 million price tag difference. And that just didn't make sense logistically for us, because that site, there's an existing building there that can only house the filters. So it would require a new building. Potentially, we've got some limitations with land there. So we'd have to build new buildings. We'd have to have a lot of transmission piping to accommodate that backwash tanks. Site electricity is concerning, so it all impacted the pricing and drove it up higher than the logical choice, which is just expanding Isabella. Any questions on that? And then the water main, the same alternatives. We can do nothing. We can optimize facilities, or alternative 3, which is the recommendation, and that's construct new. And either, there really is no other alternatives for construction. We put that water main extensions in. We put the raw water transmission line, and we do that looping there at Summit and Pickard. And so that's the associated price that you see. Construct that water main. And I know, last question I had with the sewer side, we followed the same process. We went through current pricing, working with manufacturers, vendors, but we did build in a very, very hefty contingency, just knowing that the timeline with any of these programs through Eagle, or any program through any agency that's providing financing, could be a year, 2 years out. So there is, right now we have inherently built in about a 30% contingency based on pricing today, just because the market's been extremely volatile and unpredictable. So the rate structure, just to touch on quickly, I mean, I know the township goes through this process on a very frequent basis and regular basis to make sure that what you're charging your customers is effective and reasonable, and is also covering any of your debt service, your revenues, and things like that. So built into that rate structure, as far as how it's concerned, I mean, it's got your annual O&M costs, chemical costs, the new lead sampling that we have to be doing, staff, labor, vehicles, things of that nature, short-lived assets, which is anything that's less than 25 years. That could be a flow meter, a valve, things that are more tangible that are factored in, outstanding debt that you guys might have. If you purchased a back truck or valve turning machine. And then those capital improvement projects that we're talking about here are constantly built into that rate structure to make sure that you're generating revenues to be able to finance and afford these projects. So the real question is, what impact will these have on our rates? And I know you guys have seen this in your packet already, but knowing how your rate structure is set up, we worked with Kim, we worked with your financial advisor who did your rate structure and assisted Dawn Lund. So she helped us pull together this estimate as a snapshot. So looking at trying to finance roughly $11 million for a project, what impact does that have on our user rates? So realistically, we're looking at about a $6 increase, and that's quarterly. So if you were to break that down, that equates to about $2 a month more, is what impact that would have to your user rates. And that's projected financing it just at the 20-year at 2.25, or excuse me, 1.875. Thank you. That's the number we're using, just worst case. Obviously, it would be a little bit variable if we were to do it at the 30-year at 2.25. So impacts on the project, Same as with sewer, the nice thing, these projects are all in locations that are either under the township's control, public right of way, so we're not working in areas that are environmentally sensitive, any wetlands, SHPO, endangered species. We had to go through that initial screening in the project plan and look through those different agencies to ensure that we weren't having that impact, which they're not. Construction and operations, as any other construction project, it's temporary. It's Michigan, we have, 2 seasons, construction season and then winter, it seems like. So, but it is temporary, and it works out, and with any of these projects, working with the contractor, working with staff to ensure that we've got tanks topped off, water mains are not being impacted so we don't have disruption of water to our customers. Socially, it's the rate structure impact that can potentially have some, be painful received by some. And so that's why it's important through this process here tonight, and hopefully receiving any comment and feedback from your constituents. But mitigation, I touched on a few of those. We implement soil erosion controls. Gordy Frazier's out providing construction oversight. We're working with staff. And then operationally, it's just doing this public education and outreach with your residents. So timeline of where we're at. The blue stars indicate what we've done. So we've gone through, we submitted our notice of intent. We did a pre-application with Eagle, went through all the projects with them. They were very supportive and agreeable to them. And now we're on to part 1, part 2, which is submission of this project report, which is due very soon. It's due June 1st, so we got lots of time. But, so what we're looking for is to get definitely feedback from you guys, answer any questions you may have. Hopefully there's not any of these are surprises. I think we've talked about a lot of these in the past historically, but looking to get support from this board to review the resolution, support of the resolution, to formalize it and get that submitted to Eagle for their consideration. They will, with this report itself, we're going to include that resolution, we'll include the advertisement, the affidavit, and then any public feedback that we get tonight, and also our PowerPoint for them to take into consideration. They also included with it, which was different than the sewer side, was a scoring rubric that Kim and I worked through and reviewed just to see kind of where we ranked out of 100 points based on hitting some of the targeted needs. And to highlight some of those, you guys were considered overburdened with your income, which gains us points. We have an active wellhead protection program, which gains us points. You've not had any historical violations, which is great and gains you points. These are projects that address capacity needs, they address looping. So we were quite fortunate to receive quite a bit of points in different categories for them. So getting a snapshot of that, we were at about 85 out of 100, which is quite remarkable. Taking into consideration a lot of the applications that are submitted, or going to be submitted, I'm very optimistic that's a very good score for us. So I think, again, we're very supportive of this project. I think it's a great opportunity for you guys as far as getting some of these capital improvement projects that we need to get done, potentially at an affordable interest rate financed through the state. And yeah, definitely support this. Now, I do want to make it known that, so we submit our application, and Eagle's going to come back at some point in the summer, they say, and find out what terms and conditions they're willing to approve or not approve for us. At no point are we committed to anything at this point. We're not committed to raising our rates. We're not committing to funding these projects or even moving ahead to these projects. So this is completely still a discussion topic. We want to get a project plan submitted to them to get an Eagle loan. But I just want you guys to know we're not committing ourselves to anything. And even if they come back and don't want to, with our scoring, so many applications, we want to readdress this. We still have to maintain, these projects are priorities, but we will review them and pluck them off basically how we can afford them. We're also going to just keep applying to Eagle because they're going to go through this exercise, for the next how many years. So the application's still valid. But yeah, we'll regroup and continue to prioritize our projects and do them as you guys can afford them to. So I don't want it to be complete doom and gloom. We have to do them now or it's the end of the world. That's not the intent, but these are extremely valid projects that we do want to start addressing within the next 1 to 5 years.
Can you address a little bit about the forgiveness aspect of it and
Yeah,
describe
so-
a little more detail, I guess? My assumption is that it's not a total forgiveness, or is that an incorrect assumption? Is there some kind of formula they give, or what stage in the process, if we were to move forward, do we learn that we have some forgiveness?
We'll know initially is what they're telling me, so they're gonna be coming out with their preliminary scoring, they're telling me early summer. It's hard to say with them, because I know they're
Okay.
getting inundated with a lot of applications, but let's just say early. It's gonna tell us where we land for both loan and potential loan forgiveness, what buckets we fall in. Now, loan forgiveness means they're just gonna take a certain percentage off the final agreement and loan amount from them. That's how that works. It's not, they treat it differently than a grant, but it's still a grant.
Right.
But it's a percentage base, so when we work with Eagle and commit to, say they're willing to finance the $10 million, we'll work through that through this entire process with them. Once the loan closes with them and we're done with the project, that's when the loan forgiveness kicks in, is at the very end. They'll take it, it's a percentage of the total dollar amount. So if it's 30%, they'll take $3 million off.
Thank
That's
you.
how they treat it.
I hope we get the grant.
Me too, we do, absolutely.
Any other questions? You mind sticking around here
No.
just for a minute?
No, not at all, I'm
Uh,
not leaving yet.
Do we have anybody on virtually? Well, I'll ask the public that's here if there's any questions they have. Let the record show there were no questions either virtually or in person.
We're opening at 7:42.
Yeah, so technically it's public hearing at 7:42. Again, last call, still no one in the virtual meeting. Last chance for public members that are here. No questions? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing at 7:42 PM. Thank you, Tara. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda, public comment. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. This is not necessarily an opportunity for question and answer, more of a comment. It's meant as more of a comment section. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up public comment at 7:43 PM.
Is there a proper spot to stand, or is right here okay?
I think if you stand behind there, will the mic pick up better, Hazen, if he's behind the podium? Okay. If
Okay.
that's-
Good evening. I'm Eric Spindler with the Maury Foundation. I don't live in Union Township, so I don't know if you want our Maury Foundation address, which is also not Union Township, but so if we can just keep it the Maury Foundation, if that would be acceptable. So first of all, thank you. I know my time is short, but certainly wanted to put a face to the name. Hopefully you all had the privilege to see what we submitted in regards to what is called an appeal for a sewer connection fee for a project that the Maury Foundation is heading up at the Maury Gymnastics Center. So hopefully you all are familiar with that, and that's in addition to Maury Courts. And I think it's also important to note that we're here basically as a last resort. We did take the proper steps. So, I had a conversation with Ms. Smith and tried to navigate the fee at that time and didn't have a lot of success. She did send me the information so I could understand where she was coming from, which then resulted in a meeting with Mark, which also gave us an opportunity to go through and just try to better understand. We realize that this project is unique. We realize that this isn't in the ordinance, right? And so we aren't necessarily asking for any special treatment, even though we realize that, hey, this is a philanthropic project. It's a gift to the community, fully funded by the Maury Foundation. So yeah, we definitely come with a bit of a chip because of what we're providing for the community. But also what's more important to us is being assessed a fee that we believe is fair. And because this is outside of the ordinance, there has to be some discretion on how that is determined. And obviously that was in the packet, and we believe that this is an addition to Maury Courts, and so if there has to be a comparable, that perhaps Maury Courts is the proper comparable. I do also think it's important to note that if I wouldn't have pushed this, the Maury Foundation would have been assessed a fee of nearly $50,000. When in fact, through our hard work and research over a month's time, that was reduced by $30,000 because of an error. So I think that kind of points to, this was fairly involved. We've done a lot of large-scale projects, and so we do question things. And so that's how we got into this a little bit deeper. And I do apologize that what I submitted is lengthy. It's 20-some pages long, but it was really important to me that you all understood where we were coming from and the level of work that we put in. And so myself and Mr. Maury are here this evening. So when we get to that part of the agenda, I understand it's under new business. We're happy to answer any questions. But again, we do understand that this is not the ordinance. We do understand that this project is unique. We're not looking for special treatment. We're just looking for what's fair. We've detailed that in our packet, and we believe that to be a fee closer to about $6,500. So I hope that you all have taken the time to review that, and I hope that you will consider where we're coming from. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Public comment remains open. Still nobody virtually. Anybody else? Seeing none coming forward, we'll close public comment at 7:46 p.m. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, report boards and comments. We do have a couple openings on our boards. Again, it's the same ones I've been mentioning in the last few meetings. So we have at least one on the ZBA. If the intent is to replace Trustee Brown off of the ZBA, you count that as 2. And then we have the Sidewalk Committee. And upcoming, we have that EDA board appointment that we made for the short term from the resignation from Cheryl Hunter, who served. If you remember, that was up in June, so that's coming due soon. Anybody feel tonight like they want to act on anything?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we'll dive into that then.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a nomination?
Can we just appoint the same person?
It's your discretion here.
Oh, God. Well, I don't have the application in front of me. Just a second.
Regarding the applications that we have for the ones I mentioned, we have, excuse me, my voice is a little rough, I'm sorry. Must be all that smoke from Canada.
Is it just Chowdhury?
Mr. Chowdhury is the only applicant we have at this point regarding the EDA and the ZBA. My personal preference, if we're able to fill the board with additional people, is not to have one person on too many boards. Ideally, it's nice to bring additional people from the public, but I'm open to whatever your whim is as far as making a motion.
Well, I would move to, I don't have the expiration date. The new, it would be 4 more years.
Which board are you looking at?
The EDA, are you talking about?
EDA board,
the one that's
the spot that
expiring
we have open, the
6/22?
It's a 4-year term.
Okay. So then,
so it'd be 6/22/2027.
okay. Well, I would like to nominate Sarvjit Chowdhury for the EDA board member position expiring June 21st, 2027. Or does it expire and start on the same day?
June 22nd, I believe.
It's 6/22.
So you're gonna have, if you had 2 people, you'd have one ending and one starting on the same day?
I'm assuming it ends at midnight on 6/22 is my assumption.
Okay. Gotcha. Then wouldn't it start on 6/23 then? I'm just saying.
Yes, this term would start on 6/23/2023.
I gotcha. Roger that.
But the termination date is important.
Yes, sir. Ending 6/22/2027.
We have a motion on the floor.
No support.
Yeah, I'll support that.
All right, so we have a motion by Bill, support by Brown. Everybody's clear on the motion? Any discussion? I'll only add one thing. It was nice to see him serve. We do have requirements regarding the EDA as far as the number of members that must come from within the two districts. At this point, we're okay, but being that it's a 4-year term, we just have to keep that in mind as we do additional appointments, that we're making sure we pull from within the district, right? Does that make sense?
Where does
Mr.
it say which district everybody's from?
It doesn't. It's homework done by essentially the staff and making sure that we're meeting the bylaws and the state requirements.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Milky, how would I know that?
That's why I'm saying it, that's all.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. I ask the same questions as we go through this process, and
Yes.
I'm usually asking our director over here, saying, where are they from? And are we still under the bylaws and is it state requirements or bylaws that,
It's the state act requirement.
okay. And
But
so
I thought if people didn't apply, then it would be open to anyone. Didn't we just say that last time?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And that's why this seat is valid, even though Mr. Chowdhury lives outside of the DDAs.
Yes, sir.
So, okay,
Thank you.
I was just pointing that out.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to appoint Mr. Chowdhury to the EDA, term ending 6/22/2027, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Is that a unanimous appointment? Would you be willing to make sure Mr. Chowdhury gets notified, please? Thank you. I assumed as much, but
That's what we do.
I know. But I thought I'd ask anyways. Are we good at this point? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Moving on then, any questions on the May monthly activity report? Seeing none, we'll move to item 9C on our agenda. Planning Commission, EDA sidewalks and ZBA updates by our Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Nanny. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. We have several items to talk about tonight. Our zoning board of appeals met at the beginning of May. This was actually the first action item of the year. They had a training meeting early, but they did actually have a variance application. This was for a project that actually is involved ordinance enforcement. It was for essentially an after-the-fact request related building that was built without permits. We've been working with the property owner for some time to try to get that resolved. The property owner was ultimately cooperative. There was a series of circumstances involved in this. The zoning board of appeals ultimately recognized that there were unique circumstances associated with this project, in part related to COVID. It goes back initially to the period of time that we were shut down. This was when he was first interested in building this building. He did ultimately apply for a permit in 2021 that was rejected because the building was too large of a floor area and also too tall. He ultimately built the building anyway and then attempted to apply 2022 as we were involved in ordinance enforcement on it to try to resolve that. This led to the Board of Appeals application. We worked with the applicant on trying to find a solution, and that solution was reflected in the request. The owner proposed to actually remove 300 square feet of the building. That would resolve the floor area issue. He could not resolve the height issue, but it was an 8-inch height variance, so it's not a significant height differential. Ultimately, the Board of Appeals did decide to grant that variance with the understanding that the removal would take place. That is currently being engineered right now, and we're waiting for an updated building application for that. So, that's the zoning board of appeals. Our economic development authority board also met this month. A very busy meeting. The audit presentation on the East and West EDA funds, where everything was noted to be in good order. The very positive audit. The They also took care of the annual elections. There were no changes in the officers. Tom Keequan is elected again as chair. In absentia, Brian McKee was reelected as vice chair. They would seem to really enjoy electing you in absentia.
Yeah, I'm sure. I figured something might happen with me being gone that week.
They also had an opportunity to review the first application for a grant. As you may recall, the East and West PD funds added to the budgets for those funds was an opportunity for some grant application potential to do projects in the area of site beautification, pedestrian access improvements, and also sign improvements. In this case, it was an application from Mid-Valley Structures on Pickard Road to replace their existing pole sign with a new monument-style sign. The EPA board did approve that, so the grant award is contingent upon a final inspection of the installed sign, which is to verify that everything meets the permit requirements, and then we can authorize a check for that. But they did authorize the maximum grant award for the sign, which is $5,000 on a $14,000 project. The other item on their list was related to our construction project on M20. As part of that project, initially, MDOT had indicated that they were not removing our streetlights on the south side of the road. Ultimately, the contractor decided that it was essential to take those streetlights out of the south side and store them temporarily. When they did that, they found, and we confirmed, that some of the foundations on the south side were not in optimal condition. There were some concrete issues. There was, in a few cases, there were some wiring issues, and there were also some that had mounting bracket that significantly rusted. In looking at that and looking at what was best to do with that, the electrical contractor was concerned about reinstalling those lights and those foundations. We did work with that contractor and MDOT to look at solutions. Ultimately, what was proposed out of that to our EDA board was a request to authorize the MDOT's electrical contractor, which is J-Rank Electric, to remove the existing foundations and wiring and install all new foundations and wiring on the south side. So it would match what they're doing on the north side that MDOT is paying for because of the temporary trial delay put there. So as part of that, MDOT agreed to actually pay for the removal of those foundations. So that was $5,000 of the project that was taken off of our cost. So after reviewing, the EDA board did authorize that project in recognition that J-Rank Electric had gone through a competitive bidding process for the M20 project, and they were providing the same rates for our work as they were doing on the north side for MDOT. So that project will move forward, and in fact, I understand that tomorrow those foundations will be removed, at least the process will start for that. That was the last item on the EDA board's agenda. Planning Commission also had a fairly busy agenda. The Road Commission has come forward with plans to construct salt storage buildings on their property in Transportation Drive. This is something they've been planning for quite a while. Preliminary site plan application, which the Planning Commission reviewed and did approve. Two domed structures constructed on that in Transportation Drive, and as well as some other improvements. They are currently working on the engineering and such for a final site plan approval. I suspect that we'll see that plan very shortly. The other item on their list was continue on with master plan update. Right now, we have started that process. Right now, we're kind of building a framework for what the key priorities will be for that update. So some discussion of that at the main meeting will be more in June. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Questions for our director? I have one comment. I'm really, I was sad to miss that EDA meeting, but it's exciting to see that that grant was used to make a monument, or buy a monument sign, which is one of the intents we had of that. One of the many. One of the many. So that's great news. Thanks for your report. Moving on, that brings us to item 9B on the agenda, board member reports. Trustee Therian?
I'm all set for this evening.
Mr. Nanny just did it all for you.
You did a great job. I appreciate that.
Trustee Brown?
Also.
Trustee Bills?
I attended a Isabella County Commission commission meeting on May 16th. Apparently, the construction firm for the jail project lost an employee. I don't know the details on it, but there was condolences given.
Oh.
On the job, I guess, so, I don't know, but anyway, that's sad. And
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Would you,
the Isabella County Jail project that's being built right now,
yeah.
apparently there was a loss, an employee.
Oh,
I don't know the detail. Do you know the details on it?
I've heard
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
well, but there were some condolences given, so, do you know the details on this?
It wasn't on the job.
It wasn't on the job, so it was just an employee that just died.
That was part of the major part of our project. She died
Okay,
unexpectedly.
okay. So that's what happened, okay. And then, in addition, there were several people that had comments about election issues from 2022. Then I attended, on May 17th, the Council of Governments meeting, and the animal control officer was there. He was a very, very entertaining guy. But there were a lot of dog stories, and apparently, approximately 30% of the dogs in the county do not have a license. And it's really weird the way, I'm just going to say this because maybe you don't know, because I didn't know. But on March 1st, if you didn't get your rabies shot yet for your dog, it doubles the fee for the year. So that's kind of silly, in my opinion. But anyway, that's what happens. So I guess, I don't know. So then it goes from $20 to $40 immediately. And so that's kind of weird. But there's been a couple of instances where people have said the animal control officer was, not acting professionally, blah, blah, blah. And so they got him a body cam. And they took, he's part of the sheriff's department now. He's got a nice uniform, body cam. So now the sheriff could say, well, I see the body cam, this is what's going on, And they actually had to recently shoot a dog that was attacking other dogs and humans out at Lake Isabella. So, but there's only one person and one assistant. That's crazy. Crazy number. He's got so many calls. So that's really about it. And that we made the rule that the COG meetings are going to be closed and not open to the public because somebody came to the meeting and wanted to be representing their township, but it's only for the government officials. So we made that clear, put it in our rules. That's all I have today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Treasurer Rice? Okay, thanks. I have a few items. I did send out pictures of the 2% distribution that the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe awarded yesterday, Township being one of those. So if you didn't see my message, Township was awarded $100,000 for Pump Station 1. So that's a big help there. So I want to say thank you to the tribe for that. As always, it's an amazing event. Kind of touches you right here. A lot of goodwill. I will note that we did do a joint application with the county for AED defibrillators, of which that was awarded as well. And so us being a co-applicant, and I'm assuming some others were probably involved in that application as well. Do you know that, Mr. Stuhldreher?
I'm sorry.
The AED, we were joint with the county on that. Do you know what other partners there might have been?
We were the only ones.
Oh, county and the township. Okay, thank you. Let's see. We had an intergovernmental, so that was Tuesday. This morning, we had an intergovernmental meeting, and Trustee Smith had his first intergovernmental meeting remote from Minnesota, so it was nice to have him there. City talked about some of the upgrades they're doing to their water and sewer systems. I'm looking at my notes here, forgive me. I think it was 26 million on the wastewater side is what they were spending. They're expecting 9 million in forgiveness on that. 38 million on the drinking water side. And they're also looking for forgiveness, but it's early enough in the process, they don't know what that may or may not be. You've probably heard about the town center project that's proposed downtown.
No.
So this is it's lot number 3, which would be just west of like where Pisnello's is.
Yeah.
Where Santa Claus
Yeah.
usually is.
Yeah, yeah.
Where Santa Claus usually is. They're actually going to be closing Mosier from Maine to Washington so they can create additional green space. And so I had the city manager send me the plan today. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but if you have interest in it, I'll be happy to forward it on. But that's kind of exciting for them. They also are pursuing 2 pilot payment in lieu of taxes housing facilities, and both are in high urban areas in the city. So I was excited to hear about the potential for new low-income housing opportunities. I did ask about their scooters and how that's going. I realize it's early. My question essentially was, what kind of data are you able to collect, and what do you know about it so far? And the response kind of surprised me in the sense that data collection is not something that they seem to be focused on, but they do have a good relationship with the vendors. And he said, we got a report that the first week they had 900 rides. Apparently they were pretty pleased with that. I have no way to benchmark that or if that's good or bad from my perspective, but they were pleased. So at that same intergovernmental meeting, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe talked about the renovations for the tribal college. Everybody knows where that's at now, the new tribal college. And then gave an update on the Mid-Michigan pathways. Apparently there's some debt still that on the pathways that connect Shepherd into our township. And they're working on getting that taken care of and then moving forward with the ultimate goal to connect the Pierre Marquette Trail with the Meyer Trail. And so glad to see them moving forward again. And that's all I have from notes today. Mr. Stuhldreher, did you have anything you want to add on the intergovernmental meeting that maybe I didn't touch on?
No, I do not.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda.
Can I ask one
Sure,
question?
absolutely.
The AEDs. Does that mean that we'll have one in each building here in the township, or what's that grant for us? What is that giving us for our AEDs in the township?
In this particular case, when it comes to the 2% application, there's opportunities to partner more than one entity. Sometimes that partnership involves cost sharing. Sometimes it doesn't. You're just indicating your support for the project.
Okay.
That is what we were doing on this one. We were asked to support it. I have not yet had the conversation with the county as to what we may receive from that support. It may be nothing.
Yeah.
But it is still part of the cooperative efforts between entities. We have AEDs in all our facilities, and in some cases more than one in a facility. We have one right out here. They're tested and all that. So from that perspective, our facilities don't need any right now.
Oh, nice to hear that. I didn't realize that we had one at every facility. Now, would we have one at the, like the ball field? Would there be one there? Or are we just kind of saying that somebody will call 911 in that instance? You know.
Well, I think we do have one at the ball field.
There is.
Donald Park, it's held, right now we put it in the Little League building that's out there
Okay.
because they're there and have keys to it.
Perfect.
And then there's also one at Jameson, but it's inside
Inside the
Jameson
building.
Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, all
Oh,
those
that's
were done a couple of years ago, right?
Outstanding. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
I will lift up, on the 2% snapshot I sent you from the distribution that was done. If you didn't look at what the county got, I suggest you look, because I was excited about many of the grants that were given to the county.
Yeah.
Projects that I'm excited about as a resident of the county. And I hope our Commissioner Engler was thrilled with what you guys got, so. I'm very grateful. All right, moving on, good questions. Moving on, item 10, consent agenda.
I moved to approve the consent agenda. I had warrants. They're good.
Support.
Motion by Bill, support by Brown. Any discussion? See none, all in favor of consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to new business, item 11A, resolution in support of the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund Project Plan, which is directly related to the presentation that was done earlier and the public hearing. Mr. Stuhldrahr, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this?
I do not. I think it was reviewed pretty well a few minutes ago. Be happy to answer any additional questions you may have, but the administration recommends that you adopt the resolution.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve a resolution adopting a final project plan for the water system improvements through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, DWSRF, and designated Kim Smith, Public Service Director, as authorized project representative.
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Thering. Discuss.
Yeah, it was, I'm very excited to see this again, along with, you know, the sewer funds, the drinking water fund. And I love that when we have a presentation from an outside entity, how they stand up and say how awesome our facilities are and the job that our staff does with the facilities. Thanks.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And the presentation was great, and we've seen this presentation before. So we, you know, this is a great project, and I think we're gonna get some grant money. Thank goodness for ARPA.
We need to get some grant money. It takes a lot of money to have a system like this.
Yeah, it does.
The motion on the floor? Any other discussion? Roll call.
Yep.
Would you do roll call of the board, please? And anybody unclear of the motion? Okay, roll call, please.
Supervisor Milky.
Yes.
Sorry. Treasurer Rice, yes. Trustee Bills.
Yes.
Trustee Brown.
Yes.
And Trustee Thering.
Yes.
All right. 5 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to new business, item 11B. This is in regards to the appeal of the sewer permit fee for the Maury Foundation. Mr. Stuhldrahr, do you have any introduction that you would like to give on this?
Thank you, and I do. There is a report that begins on page 32 of your agenda packet. Just to recap briefly a bit of the history. On March 8th, 2023, JBS Contracting applied for a building permit and associated water sewer permit on behalf of the Cultural and Recreation Commission of Isabella County, the owner of the facility. In the normal course of the business, the Public Service Department reviewed the plans, determined a hookup fee. That determination resulted in a sewer hookup charge of $49,998.10. And then on or about April 20th of this year, I received a call from Mr. Spindler, the executive administrator of the Morey Foundation. Also on the call was Mr. Lon Morey, who's also with us here tonight. Mr. Spindler provided information supporting his contention that the hookup fee was incorrectly calculated. At that time, I didn't have any background information or anything. We agreed that the construction project, there was imperatives to move that forward. All the plans had been reviewed. It was a question of fees, so it was requested that the fee be paid. It would be held in escrow, and with that understanding, I would direct staff to release the permit so the construction should begin. All that occurred. Payment was made on April 24th and the permits issued. As Mr. Spindler indicated, I then met with Mr. Spindler and another member of his staff, I don't recall his name, the treasurer, on April 25th. That was an opportunity for him and I to meet. I had done some additional research prior to that, and then sat down for an hour or more. And as indicated tonight by Mr. Spindler, there was disagreement on what the comparable facilities ought to be. It was also brought to my attention that the basis for our determination of the fee, which in this case was plumbing fixtures, that we had not properly accounted for all of the fixtures that were at the facility. So received a lot of information. I took that back, gave it consideration. That produced a letter back to Mr. Spindler where I agreed in part and disagreed in part with the arguments that were being made. That resulted in a revised sewer hookup fee in the amount of $19,106.80. And that is then the basis of the appeal tonight. It was indicated that they would still like to appeal it, facilitated that activity. Mr. Spindler provided the appeal information. That's all in your packet tonight. And not to speak for him, but I think at this point the fundamental disagreement is in the comparable. And Mr. Spindler spoke to that earlier tonight. So it's up to the board now to consider their appeal. Be happy to answer any questions.
Do we need a motion before we discuss?
You can ask questions
Okay.
for.
I would like to know how many fixtures was the initial determination, and how on earth we're not getting final building plans or whatever after.
As bills.
Yeah. Why aren't we getting that in like adjusting fees? That's a lot of money.
I don't know the answer to all of that. As much as you may think, there are times when an organization like Union Township or any others may not end up with the as-built, and so that happens. We try not to allow that to happen often, but it can.
Mm-hmm.
The count of the number of fixtures, we were using a set of plans that were not current, and so that created the discrepancy in the number of fixtures.
And how many was that? The original number? Because I didn't see that in the letter.
It wasn't in the letter, but I did
was?
read it
Oh, you
earlier
did?
today.
Okay.
And
Is that 37?
I believe it was in the,
I was reading 37 too.
I
The,
have that.
You do have that. Thank you.
I have that. That was part of the documents that Mr. Spindler provided me.
Okay.
When considering both the Martin Ice Arena and the Morey Court Recreation Center, both of them, our count was 85, and their count was 133.
So, what's the square footage of the or the Martin Ice Arena? I mean, I'm just trying to
The
figure
square
out.
footage.
I mean, because it can't possibly, if the new facility's 13,000 square feet, that can't possibly be close to it can't be, I think it's a totally huge building compared to that 13,000 square feet. Wouldn't that make a big difference?
I don't understand your question.
Well, so what I read, and I mean, there was a lot of stuff here, so maybe I'm wrong, but I read that we compared the new facility to the old facility as a comparable facility. But they're not, if the new one's 13,000 square feet, I mean, I don't know how many square feet the Martin Ice Arena is, but it's quite a little bit bigger than that, right?
Yes,
Wouldn't
the basis of our calculation, now, I'll just take you back a moment.
Thank you.
The ordinance describes how water and sewer connection fees are to be determined, okay?
Yes?
And they the ordinance references a table that's in the ordinance. And so, for instance, the table is part of your agenda packet, and I'll just look at that so I can give you a real life example.
Oh, you mean with the,
If a church was being built, the connection fee would be 1 REU, and the board has approved the cost per REU in your annual fee structure. So for instance, a church per this table is 1 REU plus 1/10 of an REU per 1,000 square feet. So we go through the math and calculate the hookup fee. And there's 37 types of businesses listed in the table. If there is a use not specifically stated in the table, then the language says that the residential equivalent shall be based on a similar use with water usage as indicated above, referencing the table.
and the.
I'm reading what the ordinance says. You
Right.
may
Okay.
recognize that there are a string of 4 words that are hard to say exactly what those mean, but the effect of this is if there's a facility being built and it's not on the table, then we have to figure out how to calculate the hookup fee. And we're supposed to be trying to use facilities that exist on the table that are similar in nature to what is being built. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what's being built is a gymnastics facility. There's nothing on the table that's similar. So staff decided, in their judgment, to use the existing facilities that comprise the sportsplex, which is both Maury Court and the ice arena. That's how we decided to go about it. And then the next question to ask is, you start talking about water usage. You have a new facility that's not even built yet, and you're trying to compare that water usage to something that's, in this case, not on the table. And so what we did, the math, is I think we went back 2 years, maybe 9 quarters, but we looked at the usage for both the ice arena and Moore Court, how much flowed through those meters, and decided, again, we could have used a number of things, but we decided to use the number of plumbing fixtures in those two buildings and basically divided the usage by the number of plumbing fixtures. And that would generate an amount of water per plumbing fixture. We could have used square footage. I'm not sure what other method we might have used, but we have to somehow try to form a basis, a unit of measurement. And so in this math, we determined that based on the usage, the number of fixtures that we had in our records, and applied that number, which now was so much usage per plumbing fixture, applied that to the number of fixtures that are presented on the plans for the new gymnastics facility. And that's produced the $49,000. When reviewing the number of fixtures, like I said, we had erroneous data, didn't change the methodology, didn't change the comparables, and that brought the fee down to $19,000. And as is their right and their obligation to their constituents, they have appealed that. And I believe, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you tend to think that the ice arena is not a good comparable.
You are correct.
Okay? And that is the discussion that the board is going to have tonight, I believe.
I think that that whole facility gets a lot of traffic. But if this, according to Mr. Spindler, there was no intention to have competition there, so you're not gonna have schools coming there or anything like that, just some gymnastics classes. And gymnastics takes a lot of square footage, because it does. So it doesn't seem like a huge facility, really. Do we have water data and everything, sewer data to back it up now? I mean, I don't know when it opened or anything, I don't know. Or has it opened?
The
The facility?
They're just getting
It's
the water
not,
and
So they haven't.
permits.
now being
So,
constructed.
okay.
So that's how we arrived at it. I think you, from your comments, I believe you understand it.
I understand it, sir.
What the job of the board now is to, amongst yourselves, make a decision as to whether or not to grant the appeal, deny the appeal, and that's up to the board.
Well, just saying that when I look at this list of facilities, I don't see anything close, and I don't know how, I don't know how to characterize it. But if a plumbing fixture doesn't get used, just because it's there, is it fair to charge them an REU for that, you know?
Do we have other questions for
I'm sorry, before the
Manager.
motion, yeah.
Trustee Therian?
Would it be permissible to ask Mr. Spindler a couple of questions?
Yeah, it would be better to do that prior to a motion, because once we get in debate, we should not do that. Anything else for Mr. Stuhldreher at this point? Any objections from this board asking the applicant?
No, I'd kind of like to ask him a few questions.
Trustee Therian?
Do you know what the capacity for people in that new gymnastics building is?
Good.
On your best day, how many people could you be allowed to have in there?
Well, allowed and programming are different, right? So I don't know what the occupancy has been determined, but this is a class-based facility, so as I understand it, that could mean 20 to 24 students rotating through at an hour to an hour and a half session. programming starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon through 8 o'clock in the evening, and then plausibly some later open gym thereafter for the older crowd. But again, by the nature of what gymnastics is, you can't have 50 people out there because, like Ms.
Yeah.
Mills said, large square footage of space, but not a lot of components that they would be interacting.
Is there seating for spectators?
There is a mezzanine similar to Maury Courts.
What would the mezzanine purpose be if there's not going to be anything but
The mezzanine
athletes
purpose
in
is for,
classes?
Parents.
Just to
So
view.
parents
just-
would come for the classes?
Parents to view their kids.
Oh, yeah, they do that all
So
the time.
there is competition then?
No.
Um,
Oh,
It's not like a typical gymnastics facility where they have like
It's a
AA?
rec- so it's a
a-
recreational facility.
You would-
So really their target age group is toddler to young teen.
So I'm familiar with those kind of facilities, but they have competitions all the way from little and up.
Yeah,
So that's not gonna happen?
They may have events, but not similar to where Maury Courts, where they're drawing people from all over the area to do a tournament-based event. They may
So-
do little gymnastics meets, and Maury Courts does in fact do a couple gymnastics meets in their facility, where this might be an overflow to be able to house some of that as well occasionally.
Yeah, you have to do setup there versus
Correct.
permanent.
Correct.
But just knowing what I do about gymnastics meets, from toddlers through high school, I mean, these kids travel all over the region, meaning states, to
Which
compete.
is, as I understand it, is known as a competitive gym, but this is recreational, more similar to, we actually have one here in town, Mount Pleasant Gymnastics Academy. It'd be more similar to that setup there.
I guess I'm just surprised because I
It's
didn't have
a-
that expectation. I thought of it more like Maury Courts where you have like AAU basketball and.
No, more class-based, and a lot of that has to do too with the components that you have in there. And there's a difference between boys and girls gymnastics and what you provide, and that's not the direction we've been going with it.
Any part of my question was like, in the future, and I mean this only in a good way, in the future, would there be to allow something like that to happen? Or try to work into something like that? It can only have so many people in it, like, you can only have so many people in Maury Courts, it only holds so
Correct.
many people.
Correct.
So,
Um,
that building,
Laid out for competitive gymnastics.
I'm sorry?
It's not being laid out for a competitive gymnastics, it's only for recreation.
So a lot of the components within gymnastics within the floor are fixed, so once they're there,
I got you.
like it doesn't really change too much.
Okay.
And, probably the only area that has any manipulation to it is what is referred to as a kinder gym, which is really for like small child, toddler age group. That is phone-based, and those can be manipulated and moved around. But otherwise, like the trampoline and the floor and the bars, all those things are fixed. Once they're there, they're there.
I can give you an example. Like Eric said, Maury Courts has hosted competitive gymnastics. And I've never been to it, but my understanding, if you're familiar with Maury Courts, the two middle basketball courts are multi-purpose, and that's where most of that is held. Well, this gymnastic building is about the size of one court, isn't it?
Correct.
And they use both courts plus other area. So this gym is not big enough really for a true competitive gym.
Yeah, where this would be an asset is mostly like on the spring floor. So like when Maury Courts has these events, they wouldn't have to bring that floor in. They'd be able to do that event on the spring floor within the gymnastics center. It's not really equipped to have multiple events going at one time, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you. That was my questions, I'm good.
As long as I got you up here.
Yes.
In the data I'm looking at, let me ask my manager a question first, okay? In what we're looking at with the meters, one of the two facilities that are in the sportsplex has an irrigation system. Is that accurate? Because there's a second meter, right, on the ice rink, I think?
The ice rink has 2 meters. The second meter, is that irrigation or?
Okay,
Irrigation.
thank you. So that was my question then. I just wanted to confirm that I had the right thoughts. Is irrigation planned for this facility?
No, and I'm actually surprised to learn that there because actually Maury Courts is equipped with irrigation as well. But both facilities, to my knowledge, and I serve as the board chair for the Sportsplex as well, but both facilities have not used irrigation in quite some time. We were actually under the impression that perhaps the other meter was, there's a couple large lines that fill the Zamboni. So perhaps that was more plausible than irrigation. Plus, if it was irrigation, I'd be surprised that there'd be readings through the winter months. Because we wouldn't run irrigation at that time.
I believe it's irrigation, but it could be for, it could be for something else. There are 2 meters in the ice side of things. And one of them, the usage is considerably less. I just assumed irrigation, but,
Okay. Thank you for that. When you say you're on the board, what board is that?
It's the CSRC board, which is underneath the CRC board. It's the management board for Martin Ice Arena.
Which is a private board, right?
Yes.
It's not a public board. The CRC is a public board.
entity, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
We're the managing board of the facility.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That's helpful to know about the irrigation, at least that you're not planning that. I'm assuming if that were the case, we'd probably have a separate meter for that too, but that's not being requested. Thank you. Other questions for applicant while they're here? One last question, I guess. Thank you for your time, by the way. With regards, as I understand the structure there, because we have a liaison appointed from the township to the CRC board, as do other municipalities, so it's essentially authority, right? So who is the owner of the Sportsplex, or do I need to even separate ice rink versus Maury Courts?
CRC is the owner of the entire facility.
Who is the owner of the proposed facility?
CRC.
Thank you.
Because it's in addition to Maury Courts.
That was my assumption, but I just wanted to know. Okay, awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Any other questions, clarity?
Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board?
Personally, I'm inclined to not have it be 19,000. I don't know if it needs to be 6,500, but I don't think it needs to be 19,000 either. It's a small facility. And if you look at the Martin Ice Arena, I mean, you got CMU Club going there. I mean, you got a lot of people going there. I don't see anywhere near the volume going to this other facility. So-
Yeah, and I went through a journey with this myself. I put myself in our Public Works Director's shoes, and I kind of saw myself making many of those same decisions that were made, at least how they're documented. But since we have separate meters on the ice rink, which certainly has different water requirements, I can see that as a separate entity. Right, but even though it's one Sportsplex, we have data on both the courts and the rink. Using the faucet numbers makes sense to me, because that gives an indication of what they're designing for as far as clientele, people going through there. You're not gonna put in more bathrooms than you think you need. You're not gonna put in more drinking fountains than you think you need, showers, et cetera, right? So that seemed like a very logical way to approach this from my perspective. Because when you look at the RAUs, there's different parameters or attributes that are used for different property types on how you calculate an RAU, right? Like a car wash might be the number of stalls, some buildings square footage, some is just number of apartments, those types of things. So it seemed to me that what our director did in that light made sense. So as I went through that journey, I thought, what if I remove the ice rink and look at essentially what was done, but compare it to the courts, because that is probably our best comparable. Is that reasonable? And I hate to even second guess the person that knows more about this than we do, but it makes logical sense to me. Is this speaking to you at all? So
Sure.
I didn't approach I wouldn't have thought of it in the square footage perspective.
I'm thinking of the usage perspective of what it's being used for.
Which-
And there's multiple uses for the Martin Ice Arena. You've got Taekwondo, you have all kinds of stuff there. And you don't have multiple things going on at this other facility. So,
Would you design the facility for the traffic you're expecting?
I'm not gonna
Right.
argue with you. I'm just telling you how I feel about
Yeah,
it.
okay. Other thoughts? Trustee Therian?
I'd like to make a motion if there's no more discussion. But if there's more discussion to have, please continue.
I'd like to make one more comment,
Please.
because it may have some bearing, I don't know,
Okay.
on any motion you might make, if that's okay. So I asked the question regarding ownership on purpose, because it's odd to me that the appeal was brought by an entity that's different than the owner. And maybe I can ask Mr. Spindler a question here. Do you have authority from the CRC to appeal this? Have they done a board motion?
So the authority from the CRC is to act as the liaison between the CRC for this project. So not specific on the appeal, but all business dealing with this project, I've been granted that authority. from
So
the CRC.
they've gone through that motion
Yes,
process?
sir.
Okay, so that would be in minutes then.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, thank you. Trustee Therian?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I move to grant the appeal of the sewer hookup fee. I would like to make it contingent on Union Township, even though you have the authority. That Union Township receive a letter from the owner authorizing Mr. Spindler to act on their behalf in appealing the sewer hookup fee.
Support.
Would you repeat it for me, just, sorry?
Absolutely. I move to grant the appeal of the sewer hookup fee contingent on Union Township receiving a letter from the owner authorizing Mr. Spindler to act on their behalf in appealing the sewer hookup fee.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Therian, support by Bills.
Yes, sir.
Comments? Questions? I try not to make motions too often here. If I were to make one, so this is a bit of a comment, I might have kicked it back to the staff a little bit, agreeing with the appealer, is that a word? Appellate?
Appellant.
Appellant? Agreeing with them that maybe we shouldn't be looking at the ice rink as part of a comparable, but then have the staff recalculate based on the number of fixtures comparison using the courts and the gymnastics. That way it's coming from the staff.
But at any rate, we do
And-
have a
and-
motion.
And I think this is part of my debate.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just saying that's how I might have framed that. I think the calculations were done in our packet, but it'd be nice to have that come directly from the organization itself. Mr. Stuhldreher.
I have reviewed the materials that were presented for the appeal, and if I'm hearing things correctly, if the comparable is to be just the Maury Court side of things, and we're still going to use fixtures, then the amount of 6,000 and some change is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just, that's,
I support that math.
thank you.
That's part of attachment F in.
And I looked at that, but
Mr.
I
Spindler.
thought I'd like to kick it back anyways, but
Yep.
that makes me more comfortable, so I appreciate you jumping in on that.
Also, Tara, there's a mistake in Mr. Spindler's name, right at the bottom of the page.
We've seen that earlier.
Gotcha.
today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our apologies on that.
I don't know if you read page 32, but just don't read it.
I appreciate the manager's comments. Thank you for that update. I really appreciate that, a bit of information. Thank you very much.
Call the vote.
I will say that I can absolutely be in favor of this. I in no way want this to be precedent setting. I think this is a very unique case.
I would agree. This is very unique, and 100% of what you said. This should not set a precedence going
When-
forward.
I agree too, but I think we should maybe address that list a little bit.
I want to talk about that at the end of the meeting briefly.
Oh, I'm just,
Can we do that?
yes, sir.
It's on my notes already for final board
Yes.
comment, but just trying to keep us on the motion. Any other comments? This is, we do not need a roll call on this, do we? For any
I
reason?
have it as one.
You do? Okay.
Oh, no. Oh,
Put
you
it
just
on
put it on
every one of
everybody?
them.
Okay. So,
Any,
no.
any requests for roll call?
No.
Are we calling the question?
Yeah.
We have a motion to approve the appeal for an amount of $6,580.11 contingent on the essentially minutes being, or a letter from
Receiving
the
a
CRC
letter.
giving you authority to make the appeal. And with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
And I hope you can appreciate Mr. or Trustee Thering's request with regards to authority. We don't want people coming in challenging other entities' bills, either low or high, right? I mean, and that covers our butt that you have the authority to make this request.
In all clarity, the building is not owned by the CRC until once it's up. I'm the one paying for the whole thing and doing it, and same as Maury Courts was and Martin Arena. It wasn't until it was paid that the CRC owns, the county owns. So that's why we've always had the authority. He did go to the CRC board and get clarification that he would have full role on this.
Thank you for that.
And I'm happy with that.
Perfect.
All right, with that, sorry.
Procedural. So upon receipt, I will, just so the board knows and the appellants know, upon receipt of that letter, then we have their funding. I will initiate a refund check, lack of a better term, as soon as I get that. Thank you.
Glad you're here tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stuhldreher. That brings us to item 11C on our agenda. This is regarding the outdoor fitness court, McDonald Park, and consideration of artwork. This is a fun one.
Yeah.
Mr. Stuhldreher, do you have anything you'd like to introduce on this?
I do. There's a staff report that begins on page 65 of your agenda packet. Without going into a lot of history, you're all familiar with the fitness court that's going to be placed out in McDonald Park. You've all approved that. You all approved receipt of grant money from the, I want to say it's the National Fitness Campaign for an artwork component of that. There's a big bulkhead on the back of the facility, a wall, 38 square foot or something like that. And then there's also sides to that. And there is an opportunity to put artwork on that. And you've been briefed on that in the past. I think at one point I said there might be a more involved process to try to select the specific art. There might be committees created, and that was the intent. We worked with Artreach to solicit proposals, art proposals, and we received 2. So at the end of the day, this was going to be your decision anyways. So with just 2 applications, we dispensed with all of the other process and just brought it directly to you. So there are 2 applicants, if you will.
I like the first one.
One we refer to as Croft Artwork, the other we refer to as the Edwards Artwork. Both of these artists are located in Isabella County. On page 68 and 69 are some depictions of that artwork. 68 is Croft, Edwards is artwork, or is on page 69. The staff, if you need a recommendation, or if you want to, if you need a recommendation,
We know what one we want.
we would be recommending
It is.
Croft Artwork, and that's for a couple reasons. If you look at page 69, you can see the mural at the top. You see a large sun. There's the river running through it. Those are focal points of the mural. The sun and the water, you might be able to connect those to health and recreation and fitness, which would fit well with not only the fitness court, but also the surrounding area and some of our priorities here in the township, which have to do with health and fitness and recreation. There are pine trees in the background as well, which are...
Can we bring this up on the screen? Are we able to bring it up on the screen? To show them?
Are we?
No.
Well,
I don't know, but we're looking into that. The pine trees could be seen as a nod to our history. There's been some logging history around here in the past. I know it goes back a ways. And then one of the things that we wanted to try to capture is the relationship that the community writ large, and it is a community, includes the tribal nation. And through a little bit of education on my part, or where I was educated, the turtle can be thought of from a physical perspective, physicality. The swan, I think, is important to the tribe. You'll see that on the Zimmerwing Center. You'll see that swan. The eagle you'll see prominently at the entrance to the casinos. So when you wrap all that stuff together, we think it's capturing the idea of recreation, health, tribal interaction, the river, all very important and items that help represent the community. So we thought it would look good on the facing wall of the facility. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I love that artwork.
I would love to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to select Croft Artwork, that's the one we're looking at.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, I want to make sure. The Croft Artwork as the preferred local artist submittal to enhance the new McDonald Park outdoor fitness court.
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Bills. Mr. Stuhldreher?
And I did, and it may, be redundant, but Tara Green has a relationship with the tribe. And so whatever I may have just said about the tribe, she probably is more of a firsthand, can express these things from a firsthand perspective.
Mhm.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add or that I didn't cover?
Yeah, I think that you covered it all. But when I first looked at this artwork and I was talking to Rodney, he didn't notice this, but like Mark pointed out, the Turtle Island, the swan, that basically is Zebra Wings logo right there. It also has the strawberry and the corn. Those are sacred foods. There's 4 sacred foods at any ceremony. So those are in there. The McGee's or the eagle is in there.
Yeah.
That's sacred. So the artist did a very good job of subtly dropping those things in the painting. So that's what I noticed right off the bat.
I am not an art critic, nor am I after any of this either. My gut reaction was choosing this one. Thanks for that motion. So I'm in support of it. Just on the eye-pleasing aspect of it.
The
And
simplicity.
it is awesome to hear this explanation because it brings it to life more than I had in my own art eye, which is very limited. So I appreciate the extra comments on that. But I was
Can you
already
show-
here.
Will you show the public the other art, please? I appreciate that.
While she's doing that, I also love the simplicity of it and the fact that, you know, it says a lot subtly. You know, it's just very catching. I love it.
All right.
It's a great addition to the
Yes.
Athletic court.
all the
fabulous
other work
exercise
that we've put
facility.
into that
Yeah.
exercise facility. It's just going to dress it up for the park.
Trustee Therian, anything to add? We have a motion to approve the Croft artwork as the winner of the competition.
Yay. $25,000, right?
5, I think.
Oh,
Isn't it?
5.
Five.
Oh, darn. Darn it.
Only if you're heading the 20, right?
And just a note for the public too, since you mentioned that, the award of $5,000 comes from the National Fitness Campaign and not out of necessarily the township coffers.
Okay.
Good
So,
call.
Public might want to know that.
Definitely appreciate both applicants and the work
Yes.
that they do.
For sure.
Yes.
So
There's
all in,
value in everything. So.
yes, all in favor of the motion to approve Croft artwork as the preferred local artist submittal, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Moving on. Thank you, Jennifer Graham.
Thank you.
I got it right this time.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate your hard work.
All right, that takes us to item 11D on the agenda, Policy Governance 2.3, Compensation and Benefits. This is in our manager or executive
Thank you,
wheelhouse.
guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is in your wheelhouse, so I'll allow you to do the introduction for this.
This is the time of year, May, when when the board reviews the administration's adherence to policy 2.3, which is titled Compensation and Benefits. The high-level policy wording states that with respect to employment, compensation, and benefits to employees, consultants, contract workers, volunteers, and collective bargaining units, the township manager shall not cause or allow jeopardy to fiscal integrity or public image. There are then 5 or 6 subcomponents of this policy. One is that the manager shall not change his or her own compensation or benefits except as those benefits are consistent with packages for all employees. Manager shall not promise or imply permanent or guaranteed employment to any individual. Management shall not establish compensation and benefit levels that deviate materially from the geographic and professional market for the skills that are being employed. Managers shall not create obligations over a longer term than revenues can safely be projected. Establish or change defined contribution plans so as to cause unpredictable or inequitable situations. So that's your policy, almost verbatim, not quite. I interpret that to be that the Board of Trustees wants to ensure that the township manager does not change their own compensation without board approval, that there should be some consistency, constancy, at least on the benefit side between managers and employees, that there should not be any implied or promised employment to anybody, that we need to be competitive with our benefit and payment packages. All of this interpretation is basically just coming from the fact that it seems to me that the policy is fairly clear and straightforward. So that's my justification for the interpretation, because I can read. The data that is provided, I think, supports that the manager and the management team is in compliance. My compensation package has been approved by the board. The last employment contract was executed in October of 2022 with an effective date of 1/1/23. The collective bargaining unit's compensation package is a result of collective bargaining negotiations and an agreement that was that's in place from January 1 of 23 through the end of 2025. These agreements were approved by the board, and they are, one of the intents was that they be and remain at a minimum competitive with the surrounding employers. The package is affordable. We see that in our long-term projections as part of the contractual negotiations. We continue to transfer more of the health care benefit costs from the employer to the employee, which is, gets to the fiscal ability of the township. All positions that did come open during 2022 were filled via what I describe as a competitive process. We post the positions internally, externally. We have interview teams that comprise individuals from across the organization that conduct the interviews. And so based on that data that I just ran through, I do believe that we are in compliance. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Not on this.
Seeing no questions?
Questions?
2.3. Submitted on time?
Yes.
Yes.
Did the report lay out the manager's interpretation of the operational definition of the policy?
Absolutely.
Yes. I believe the interpretation is justified, and or there's proof provided to explain why the interpretation is reasonable.
Yes.
Yes.
Did the interpretation address all aspects of the policy as we read it?
Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And do you agree that it showed that we're in compliance?
Yes.
Yes.
I should say we, meaning the manager and management team.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, issues on this? It's pretty clear. 2.3 is pretty simple
Yep.
and direct.
Yep.
I can read too.
Clear enough you can read.
Yeah. Moving on. No objection?
No objections.
That takes us to item 11E, Policy Governance 3.10. This one's more for us. I assume all of us have read it. I will state just for the public, this policy is actually fairly lengthy, but there is a high-level description of it. The policy states, because poor governance costs more than learning to govern well, the board will invest its governance capacity. And if you really want to read the policy, go online and see the packet there, and at the back of the packet is about 3 pages of description of this particular policy. But with that, I'll direct to our board the questions we're supposed to ask ourselves of this. Do you believe this board is in strict compliance, yes or no?
Yes.
No objections on that? Right?
Right.
Any issues here that you think we can improve upon as far as being even more compliance?
Personally, I think we should have at least one or more committees so that we could have, kind of spitball things around a little bit more.
Could you expand on that, please?
No. But I have asked for committees, a couple of different committees throughout the year, last year. I don't recall what they are right now. I'm just telling you I think that we could have breakout sessions that would be,
Oh, you mean with the board?
yeah, among ourselves.
I misunderstood.
I'm
When I
sorry.
heard committee, I heard like sidewalk committee, or
Oh,
I thought
no.
particular
Oh, I don't
charge.
need- No,
I,
no, thank
which
you.
that makes a lot more sense to me now that I'm hearing it
Oh,
the right
thanks.
way.
One, I believe we wanted to do an ARPA, kind of a ARPA group that was gonna do some stuff, and then the other thing was the grant committee. But that never went anywhere, so I'm dropping it.
I appreciate your comment, and it makes perfect sense now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything, as you read through the policy, that doesn't sit right with you? Is either, the hardest thing, of course, is always, is there anything missing? Right?
No, it's
Um,
well thought out.
There was, on the last page, 81, let me see if I can find it. I didn't write my note in here, because I knew I would just know it when it came time. We still have the Union Township Sustainability Committee listed, which is now a defunct committee. I thought we had removed that. And maybe we decided to leave it. Do you have a memory of that?
We talked about removing
Yeah.
it, and I don't remember.
Let's
I mean-
remove it.
It's a reasonable committee, and it did some good work in the past. They're the ones that were responsible for the cleanup day that we have every year, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
That came from that committee.
well, that's cool.
But their charge, at that point, they ran out of a charge, and so we disbanded the committee, and there may be a need in the future to have a sustainability committee, but in the meantime, I kind of felt, should it be on our list? And there was one other one I thought.
So there's currently.
Oh, Middle Michigan
Yep.
Development Corporation. I guess we are in compliance there. Now that I see it, we don't send a board member there, but we do have someone from the township that is represented at the MMDC. Mark is on the MMDC board. I'm sorry, our manager, Mr. Stuhldreher.
And the executive committee.
Yes, thank you for that
Thank
clarification.
you.
And I think that's where we, in the past, have counted that as our representative on that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Any objections at this time for removing Union Township Sustainability Committee?
No,
No
And then
objections.
we do have in 11 temporary committees, those being different than, I think, what you were speaking to, Trustee Bills, those being committees that we stand up or on behalf of the board to get a task done.
right.
Yes. So with that, Mr. Stuhldreher, would you be willing to take the Sustainability Committee out of that section of the policy governance? Do you need a motion on that?
No.
Okay. Thank you all. Anything else?
No,
Moving on, takes us to item 12 on our agenda, extended public comment. Extended public comment is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any item at all, within, obviously, decorum. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing that we have no one attending virtually, we have one public person left who's already spoken today, but you certainly
Still
can get up
very
if you'd
public?
like. And with that, we'll open up extended public comment to at 9:10 p.m. Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll close extended public comment at 9:10. That takes us to item 13 on the agenda, manager comments. Mr. Stuhldreher.
Thank you, and I just have two. One is a brief update on the citizen survey that we're doing. We have met with Ms. Center from CMU. She assisted the township in the survey the last maybe 2 times. And she is going to be, by the end of this week, providing a cost and an interpretation. We met, talked about scope of service, so she's going to provide that to us along with the cost. And we're going to be addressing 3 kind of things in this survey. One, well, we have 3 needs for the survey, I think is a better way to put it. We're in the middle of updating our master plan, so we need information from the public on that. So there might be some questions related to that, which is primarily about land use and future land use and that kind of thing. And then we also are updating our recreation plan, master plan, if you will. And once we do that, that should get us eligible to begin applying for some DNR grants that you can't apply for without this recreation plan. And so getting that updated requires public input, so some of the survey will be directed to those kind of questions, which you might think would be focused on parks, generally, specifically, recreation, generally, specifically. And then from the board's own general perspective, overall township perspective, there'll be questions that you'll want included in the survey. The board will be meeting with Ms. Center, assuming we complete this, approve the scope of service and agree to work with SAMU, so that you'll be able to have direct input onto the questions that you want to see in the survey.
Cool.
The other item is that we wrapped up the Care Store Drive last Friday, the 19th. Went very well. We had a pickup truck full of items that were delivered to the Care Store yesterday morning. And we had a picture taken. It was kind of cool.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Amy and Tara and myself went over there. Larry, our building official, helped us load the truck. He drove the truck.
Nice.
And I think the Care Store folks I know they were, very appreciative. And they indicated to me that it was very successful. They've seen a lot of drives, and it was successful enough that if you've ever been in the Care Store, they have a display case with a lot of their large contributors, funders. I think it normally takes a certain amount of money to end up there. Well, we're going to end up there based on the volumes of this drive. So we'll have some public recognition in that display case as well.
Thank you, Tara.
So that's my
Good job.
update.
Great job to in the town.
Thank you, and back to you.
Just a clarification briefly on, you mentioned the rec plan and being able to get federal grants
State.
with the recreation plan, park
State.
plan?
Right.
DNR,
DNR, sorry.
certain
Um,
DNR grants.
just for the public, we have a parks plan, it's just out of date. And so to be able to apply for those grants, it needs to be updated at this point. It's not that we don't have one.
Every 5 years, right?
Yes, I believe so. I just didn't want the public to think that we didn't have one and therefore didn't qualify. We actually have one, it's needing to be updated.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Stuhldreher.
Brings us to final board member comment, item 14 on our agenda. I'm going to circle back this way. Treasurer Rice.
Well, I actually was in the other night before the care store stuff was taken, and I got to see it all out there, and there was a lot. It was very awesome. So I think a big round of applause to the ladies for bringing that forward, and the township for stepping up. I love it. So that's all.
Trustee Bills?
I actually forgot to mention something from the COG meeting the other day. County Administrator Frost brought up the fact that the materials recycling in Michigan, well, first of all, I probably already told you guys this, but we are the most trash producing in the nation, in our state, and we are
The county?
our state is the
Oh, our
most
state is the
trash
most.
producing state in the nation. And that we also are the least recycling state in the nation. So it's terrible. But anyway, she said that Administrator Frost stated that the government's take on materials recycling or materials handling has been, do you have some place to put it? But now they're going to be requiring a materials management plan, and you will have to find a place to put it besides in the ground, and you're going to have to do that. So those are mandates, and there's going to be huge landfill fee increases because of that, because there will not be, they're not driving towards that. They're driving away from it. And so that's why the materials recycling, what's going to be called?
Single stream.
The single stream, but what are they calling it? Not a commission, but an authority. The materials recycling authority that we're going to get is going to be regional, and that's what and they've been having good feedback from other counties. Anyway, that's all I said. And I'm on vacay next week. Yes! Good weather.
It's gonna rain.
No way, man. No way. I hope it rains here because I'm going to be out of town. Okay. That's it.
Trustee Brown?
Two simple things. I heard something mentioned today about the pump truck usage, potholing these lead pipes. What a great use for that piece of equipment, and talk about saving some serious time out in the field. So I like to hear that, and I'm always going to pick that up. And also, I just want to wish everyone a great Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. It does look like good weather. I don't know where Commissioner heard rain, but it looks like good weather. And it looks like good weather all the rest of this week. So Connie, you might as well stick around. We could probably
Yeah.
use you around here. You don't need
No
to
way,
go on
man.
vacation.
Not going to happen. Okay.
Have a great weekend.
How about we get some rain at night for the farmers at least?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Good
gonna
night, rain.
And
Hey,
the mushroom hunter.
it is Michigan,
Right.
It you never know.
Good snow.
Trustee Thering.
I'm good. Thank you.
Just a couple things. There was a comment made tonight, and it's, I just have to call it out, I guess, because I didn't view it this way, and maybe you do. But with regards to the sewer permit fee that we had debate on, it was stated there was an error made by our director, and I don't view it that way at all, based on the information that we had. We didn't have as-bills. It was the information we had. I don't consider that an error. And it is not Union Township's responsibility to make sure we have the most current drawings. I believe you used the best data that you had available. And I didn't like it being called an error.
I agree.
Agreed.
With that being said, I hope the board's actions tonight regarding that issue aren't taken personally in any way by our Public Works Director or our manager. Part of the RU problem that we have, and Trustee Bills alluded to this earlier, is RU is a very discrete list. It is not static, and we could work on it, as you said. And I think a lot of municipalities that work on an RU update that periodically. But it is very imperfect, especially when you get into those situations where it doesn't match. And so I commend our staff in coming up with what they felt was the best way to come to a cost. So with that being said, too, just a little history in the prior board. So Treasurer Rice will remember this. I think I've mentioned this before, but at the end of the prior board, we were looking at actually switching potentially from RUs to a different mechanism, which is more common today, which is meter size. And the part of the issue with that is it's politically dicey. It is ultimately, when you go through the process, you end up with some winners and losers. Some people that had a sweetheart deal under the RUs suddenly paying more, and vice versa. But it is a different mechanism that eliminates this fuzziness that you have with an RU list when it's not on the list, if that makes sense.
That makes really good sense, actually.
So if there's interest in this board to maybe have a little bit of education on that, if our manager's not opposed, we can have an opportunity to educate the board on how those two work differently.
Sure.
Is that something this board would like?
Absolutely. It's actually on the monthly report of potential future items, I believe, if I read correctly, so.
Yes, but an education piece would be a good way to start it off. Following I believe it was done in 21, we had several studies done, cost of service studies done on water, wastewater. We had connection fee studies done, we had miscellaneous fee. And there was some talk at that point that I'd like to see the board and the township move away from REUs, use what flows through the meter, and have a rate based on actual usage of the meter. Associated with that would be the elimination of that table, but it would be replaced with another table. But the replacement table would be more along the lines of, if you're having a 2-inch meter installed, for instance, it's X amount of dollars. At the time that study was done, a 2-inch meter would have cost $39,000 at the time of the hookup, and then also had some impact on your quarterly usage fee. And so, education is a good place to start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all saw firsthand where RUs break down. As far
Any
as
of the systems are going to break down.
Yep.
But in my opinion, informed, if it's difficult for the administration to explain it, to implement it, if it's difficult for the community to understand it, then we ought to work on it.
Yeah.
And what would come out of it is, I think, amongst many things, but right now the environment's set up where it really doesn't matter to the developer how big a meter they put in. 2-inch meter costs the same as a 6-inch meter right now. And whether they need water volumes that, 2-inch meter can handle, maybe you get a 6 one because why not? And so we have, I would guess, many meters that are oversized out in the system. And why not, you know? It's rational. And, but I think it would also require the developers to pay more attention to the aspect of their engineering and all, how much water they think they are actually going to use, because or need, because there'll be a significant price difference between a 2 and a 3 and a 4-inch meter.
That's why you pay for an engineer, right? I hope.
But anyways, agreed.
And I'm done with that, so I'm happy to entertain any motion to adjourn. Our business is done tonight.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
Motion by Bills, support by Brown to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
9:26.
Thank you.